The story you're about to see is true. The names have been changed to protect the innocent.
Last week, one viewer suggested a video that would explain the export window options in PowerDirector. Now, many users are confused over what the best export settings are, and they tend to stay with whatever comes up by default, which, with all other things considered, usually works out okay. But they may not be getting the best video quality nor the fastest possible rendering time. Now, I tried everything I could to fit it all into just one video, but that became impossible. So here is part one, which covers most of the basic information. And I'll do this using 3 different tests on the same project files. Now let's take a look at what's available. Before I start with anything else, I'm going to open up my Preferences window and then click on Performance along the left side. There are many videos all over the internet giving advice about setting your system's preference settings for optimum performance while editing and the fastest way to export your project out to its final video. Almost every one of them is outdated because back in February of 2025, Cyberlink extensively revised the preference window and removed several categories and options that the user could set. Categories such as export, file, and hardware acceleration no longer exist, so it's no wonder people get confused as they try to watch these other tutorials. If you watched my video number 113 back in February that is called Introducing the New Preferences Window, you would know these things as well as the fact that there is the new Performance category where there are 2 or 3 critical settings you should know about. The only item that I'm going to look at in the Performance category for this video is the option for hardware acceleration. This is important to accelerate tasks such as video rendering, color grading, and effects processing, and you want to make sure that you have it enabled. It applies to both discrete graphic cards, the GPU, and integrated graphics built into some but not all CPUs. If this choice is grayed out on your system, it could be because neither your computer's GPU or CPU support the required technology. In such cases, your computer system is greatly underpowered and probably doesn't meet the minimum hardware requirements for installing PowerDirector. Yet many people do it anyhow and then blame PowerDirector for how slow and laggy the performance is. One other reason for this option being grayed out is that for some reason such graphic capability has been disabled in your computer's BIOS settings. If you are not familiar with changing the BIOS settings, look for assistance from somebody who knows how, perhaps your 11 or 12-year-old cousin. On mine, the choice for hardware acceleration is enabled, so I'm good to go. I'll close the Preferences window by clicking on OK. Here comes test number 1, using the standard recommended settings. Back on the main editing window of PowerDirector, I need to have something on my timeline in order to export out to a video. Here comes my big set of project files. I'll click on Use Sample Media. And then I'll grab any JPEG image in any MP4 file and drag them both to the timeline. Next, I'll click on the blue Export button at the top. At the top area of the Export window is an area for your file name of your video and the path where it will be stored. I'll give this one a name of Test1 Standard. And I'm going to choose just a temp folder that I have already set up. Now for the important but confusing part, the video settings. I'll make sure that Recommended is selected, and then I'm going to look over the settings. I do find it somewhat strange that they call these recommended settings because they allow you to change any of the specific parameters. I could change the frame rate and bit rate to something ridiculous and it would still say recommended. The question is if what I'm now looking at is really the recommended settings for my project. We'll find out in a minute or two. Next, I'll begin the process by clicking on Export at the bottom. After a few seconds, the rendered video is complete. I'll click on the Open File location at the bottom. This opens up a Windows File Explorer window which shows the completed video. I'll right-click on it, then select Properties. From there, I'll click on the Details tab. Now make a mental note that the video data rate is about 8,000 kilobits per second, the frame rate is 30 frames per second, and the audio bit rate is 388 kilobits per second. As I scroll down, most importantly, the file size is around 15 megabytes. I'll close the Properties window, then I'm going to minimize the File Explorer window for now, and then I'm going to close out the Export window. Have I just used the best and most efficient export settings, or have I somehow forced it to change the video in some fashion? Now let's check with the original source video to see what we started with. On the timeline, I'll right-click on that video file and choose Properties. In the Power Director Properties window, it tells me that the video is H.264. The bit rate is around 4.79 megabits, 1920 by 1080, 29.97 frames per second, and an audio rate of 192 kilobits per second. I know this may start to sound like information overload, but you are going to need to recognize these values, or at least a range of these values, to be able to know what is high quality and what is not. If it helps you for your own NextView project, write these numbers down on a piece of paper. Now, I can recognize them as using a common standard format, but with somewhat lower quality points, such as the video bit rate being only 4.79 megabits, and the audio being set to only 192 kilobits. But that makes them good enough for just sample files. I'll close the property window. We just looked at my produced video, and the one that I created had slightly increased video rate of around 8 megabits and an audio rate of 388 and a different frame rate of 29.97 instead of 30. Yes, there is a technical difference between 29.97 and 30, but it's usually not important unless there is a human face talking in the video. What can I do to export using the same values as the original source file? Well, now time for test number 2. I'm going to use the standard recommended profile, but manually set it to 29.97 and a 4 megabit bit rate. I'll click on the export button at the top once again. Before I do anything else, I'm going to give this attempt a new file name of test2 manually modified. In the video settings section, these are the same values as the last time. I'll first change the frame rate so that it matches from 30 to 29.97. In the bitrate section, I'll change it to custom and then change the value from 8,000 to 4,000 kilobits per second, which is the same as 4 megabits. Now I'm at the same exact values as the original source file. I'll click on Export at the bottom. After a few seconds, the rendered video is done. I'll click on Open File Location again. In the File Explorer window, I'll right-click on the Test2 video and choose Properties. When the Properties window opens, I'll click on the Details tab. This time, we see it's still 1920 by 1080, but the data rate is down to just over 4 megabits, which matches the original source file. The frame rate is now 29.97, which also matches the original. As I scroll down, the file size is down to about 8 megabytes instead of 15 megabytes from test 1. If I were to play each video now, they look virtually identical, yet I was able to cut the file size almost in half on a 10-second video. Imagine what your savings would be on a much larger project. Now, sharp-eyed viewers may have noticed one thing that does not quite match the original source file. I'll scroll back up, and once there, can you spot it? It's the audio bitrate is still at 388 instead of 192, which is found in the source file. This means I could re-encode it again at a slightly lower audio bitrate, but how much of a difference would that make to the file size? Well, what the heck, let's find out. I'll close the Properties window, minimize the File Explorer window, and close out the Export window. Now, my final test today will be to show you how to change the audio bitrate, or actually just about any other parameter. It's going to involve the use of a custom profile in the Export window. Hold on to your hats and buckle your seatbelts because this might be all new territory for some users. Here comes test number 3. I'm going to create a custom profile to set the audio to match. I'll click the blue Export button once again. First, I'll give it a different file name such as test3 custom profile reduce audio to 192. If you notice, there are no audio settings shown in the export window. You can only access them by clicking on Custom Profile. If you don't have any other existing custom profiles, then PowerDirector will start out by telling you that there are no saved custom profiles, and it asks if you want to save the current setting as a new profile. There is no logical reason for the program to ask this question, because you really have only one choice, and that is to answer yes. I'll show you why by answering no. As you can see, a no answer just kicks you right back to the export window. The only answer that is allowed is yes. So why not just say that? Because there are no saved custom profiles, and the initial one is created based on the current settings. Is that too simple? Maybe I expect too much logic from software engineers. All right, I'll start this over again. I'll click on Custom Profile. When asked this nonsensical question again, I'll play along and click Yes. Now, finally, I'm making progress. I am first asked to give the new profile a name. I like to be very specific in these custom names, so I'm going to enter H.264 MP4 1920 by 1080 29.97 FPS, 4 megabit per second, or Mbps, 192 kbps. I know that seems like way too much information for just a name, but trust me, it will help identify the custom profile if I ever go to use it again in the future. Now finally, I'm back in the export window, but I am now using a custom profile. Now, so far, everything is the same as the last test I made, but this time I want to adjust the audio compression to match that of the original source clip. You may have noticed that the audio compression values are never shown in the export window. I wish they were with a drop-down menu just like any of the other values. The only way to access those values is to edit the profile. I can do that by clicking on the Edit Profile icon just off to the right of the profile name. Finally, I get the Profile Setup page to appear. I don't really care about the description. You can change it to anything you want, but for me, the profile name itself tells me everything that I want to know. If you look at this initial page giving the summary of all the settings, the only thing that I need to change is the audio bitrate shown near the bottom, which is currently 384. I need to change it to 192 to match the source video. I'll click on the Audio tab at the top. Now here I need to change the audio compression rate from 384 to 192. And that's it. I'll click on OK to close the profile setup window. If you look at the export window now, it appears the same, except by using the custom profile, the audio compression rate has been reduced. You just can't see that change to the audio unless you click on the Edit Profile icon. I've complained about this to Cyberlink years ago, and it's been officially passed on to the engineering team. In other words, into the round filing cabinet it went. If I use this custom profile now, it will render out a video that exactly matches that of my source media files. I'll click on Export, and after a few seconds, the file is rendered out complete. I'll click to open the file location. Once there, I'll right-click on that third file and choose Properties. Then I'll click on the Detail tab at the top. You can easily see all of the video parameters are the same as before, but this time the audio bitrate has been reduced to around 200 or so. Now, how much of a file size did that save us? If you remember, in test 2, it was about 8 megabytes. I'll scroll down a little just to see. Well, now it's just under 8 megabytes, which is not much of a savings, but remember, this was just 10 seconds of audio. It could be much greater of a savings if dealing with multiple files or a large project. I'll close this property window, and I'll minimize the File Explorer window. And finally, I'm going to close the export window and return back to the main editing window. I know this has been a long, drawn-out way of getting here, but I needed to do it one step at a time to make sure you could see the difference in the end results. Plus, you should now know how to create a special custom profile. Next time you try that, it would bring up a window showing the already created custom profile in a drop-down menu for you to select one, or maybe create a new one based on a previously created custom profile. Hopefully this sheds a little light on the export window and the various settings that are there. I could play all 3 of these files that I created, and nobody would be able to tell the difference. If I haven't confused any of you getting to this point, I hope you at least pick up on a thing or two from this video. There is going to be a part 2 for this video because in the real world, not all of your projects will have the video source files in which the settings are identical. Today, I used a very simple project with only one video file. In part 2, I'm going to throw a 4K video file into the mix. And there definitely will be some turbulence ahead, along with a surprise or two. So stay tuned. Make sure to subscribe and click on the notification bell so that you get a notice whenever a new video gets posted. If you have any questions or comments, and I'm certainly expecting a lot of them, just leave them below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.